If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call and talk show all about the Wheel of Time. Now, today, we're actually speaking with two wonderful people that I'll bring in here shortly, Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. But before I do that, I want to remind you of a couple things we have coming up here at the Dusty Wheel. Next Wednesday, we're talking all about Daniel Henney and Lan. Yes, becoming Lan. I can't wait to have this discussion. We're going to be meeting up with John from What Up, Vance, the Bard of the Red Hand, and Matt, also known as Malkier's King on Twitter, and talking all about how we think Daniel Henney will embody this character. Then, next Sunday, we're doing our next Wheel of Time table read. Yes, we've done this once before, and this is where my friend, writer, and fan of the Wheel of Time, Christy Lucier, is actually creating a mock screenplay adaptation of some scenes from Faldara, and we're going to enact that. We're going to read that live with a variety of fan actors with us. That was a lot of fun last time. And one last note, just let me remind you about this. On May 2nd, we're going to have a live screening of the independent film Starboy, which stars Barney Harris, the actor who's playing Matrim in The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. And we're going to have the writer and director, Joelle Bentalila, and she's going to be there with us talking all about this after we watch this together. So make sure you go follow us over at the Dusty Wheel on Twitch. Don't miss out. Like I said, that's May 2nd at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay, that's enough, right? You got enough announcements. I think it's time. Let me welcome to the show award-winning narrators and friends of fandom, and also friends of mine, Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. Hey, welcome both of you. How you doing? Cheers, nice. I like the mug flex there. So it's awesome to have you both here with us. Now, this is something we didn't do last time, but I want to do this time, which is kind of the state of Kramer and Reading. I want to hear all about the things that are going on with you both. But before we do that, before you kind of give us an idea of what's been happening in your lives for last year, I want to remind everybody one of the purposes we're here tonight, or today I should say, is this cause Books to Prisoners. And I don't know if you want to, is there a way you can quickly summarize that for us, Kate and Michael? What is Books to Prisoners for viewers who have never heard about it before?
So Books to Prisoners is an organization based out of Seattle, but they serve incarcerated people all over the country. And their goal is to deliver books to incarcerated people so that they have material to read.
Yeah, it's a great cause, and actually our goal today was to raise, I think, over $500 for this organization, and fans have already been donating before this, and I'll definitely update you here, all that are watching this, about an hour in, and let you know how that's going. But right now you can donate. I think we'll have some admins in chat here. If you're with us on YouTube, you can come over and check that out. They'll put a link to this donation location. If you want to take part and help us raise those funds today, you can. And just make sure at the end, once you have donated, if you do, take a screenshot of that donation. Make sure to send it to Taylor or I over here at the Dusty Wheel. You can send it through social media. Just ask an admin in chat and they'll help you out. I can't wait to find out just how much fans, and share that with everyone, how much fans have donated to this cause. It's a great cause. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I know we brought it up last time. You're really great about every time you meet up with a podcast, whatever it is, talking about this cause. And I saw a lot of comments on social media just how much people appreciate it. I actually saw someone mention that they had a son, I think, incarcerated, and that books meant a lot to their son. So thank you very much for doing that. And I'm sure we'll talk about that here a little bit more as we go. So, and there was actually something, we had breaking news, everyone, about that. There was something that we were going to announce later on in the show that relates to this. But let's announce it now. It's something that is exciting. Do you want to do the honors? Tell everybody what you have coming up here for your. I don't want to give away. Maybe just announce what that is.
So this is super exciting. This is State of Kramer and Reading. One of the things that we have been doing over the past year and a half is sort of beefing up our website and making it easier for independent authors to find us, to hire us, doing a lot more, engaging a lot more on social media. And because the world is tiny and the circles of people overlap so intensely, we discovered that Rob Christensen and Jennifer Christensen, Rob is a graphic designer and he runs the Weekly Wheel News, and Jennifer runs an amazing one-stop mom and pop print-on-demand shop. And so we got together with them. They designed a logo for us, and we are officially launching our merchandise. And this is the announcement of the launch. And I told Jennifer about this, and I believe they may be watching. Hi, they did incredible work. And I just got an email from Jennifer that basically said Rob had told her about our goal of raising funds for Books to Prisoners. And so any of our merch items that sell before midnight Pacific time tonight, New Creations by Jen will donate an extra $5 per item directly to Books to Prisoners. So that's lovely.
Yeah, that just showed up. What a great way to be in the show here. So yeah, if we'd love to donate, you'd love an opportunity to get some swag, to get this mug. I'll be honest, right? A little frosted mug behind us. Those are fun. I can't wait to. I'll be buying one of those after the show.
You're in the club now. We're in the club.
You are. That's it's a great way. I love that you've listed all the authors that you've done work for behind some of the mugs themselves, and this is really great from Jen to be able to add a little wrinkle, hopefully, to everyone who wants to jump out and maybe purchase something. Maybe this will kind of kick that in gear and give them incentive to go make sure to do that today if they're going to do it, because before midnight, she's going to add $5 to the total amount donated to Books to Prisoners. So thank you very much, Jen. And yeah, that's congratulations. It's fun to eventually kind of put some merch out there and have people be part of that experience with you. So that's great. Now let's jump in. That was kind of the beginning of our State of Kramer and Reading. Now this past year has been huge, I think, for fantasy fiction and the work you've been doing, especially when it comes to Brandon Sanderson. I feel like, I don't know, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you've been doing a lot with him. I don't know if you want to speak to, what are the projects you've been working on with him recently?
Well, we did Rhythm of War last fall. I think it was originally scheduled for July, August, but it was more like August, September. and that turned out to be 57 hours.
Oh,
And then we've added to that since. I think Dawn Shard is going to be released very, very shortly, if it isn't already out there, which is continuing the story. And then we have Wave Kings Prime, which was a result of the Kickstarter that they ran. The response was so intense that they said we have to have an audio version of the print version. And so that was 35 hours, something like that, I think, or 37 hours. And it was fascinating to see that story as opposed to what ultimately became Way of Kings, that has been released as the beginning of this Stormlight archive. And I'm still waiting, and I've been told, I think Brandon had announced that he's going to finish Mistborn second generation this year at some point, but probably not till late. But so I'm expecting the fourth volume of Generation 2 of Mistborn at some point as well.
Yeah, it's continual, right? He never stops writing, which is really impressive. But what was that experience like? That Rhythm of War had to have been, I mean, like I said, it was 57 hours by itself or something to that effect. And not only that, there was, I think, if I remember correctly, you had some kind of hurricane. Was it a hurricane happening at the same time? You almost flooded your house?
6 inches of rain in an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
The city's storm pumps couldn't keep up, so water was coming down both from the sky and then up through the storm drains because it was so intense. I took a video of our backyard, and there was a 20-foot wide to 30-foot wide 6-inch wall of water that just kind of came down the hill towards us. So
that's great. I remember you posting afterwards, like back to work, like the next day or something. Yep. So thankfully your studio did not get. Did you have any water damage in the studio? Just a little.
Yes. Yeah, we had like a half-inch of. We're in the top of a hill. I mean, that's
Oh wow. Okay.
Almost at the top of a hill. So that's how much water came down. Because it came in from underneath. So.
Yeah, it was crazy when I saw those posted, and then that you were continuing the work the next day. So yeah, good thing you were on the hill, I guess. Well, I know that you also had done a lot of fantasy fiction. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Wheel of Time here shortly. I'm sure there's lots of Wheel of Time fans like, okay, get to the Wheel of Time questions already. But does fantasy fiction, I'm kind of curious, when you do a lot of fantasy fiction by different authors, does it have a particular cadence to it? Is there a sound to fantasy fiction that's different than other genres, or is it all just the same? It's just voices.
I think they're all different.
Yeah.
And each author's voice is so unique. I'm doing a Charles DeLint book right now. It's called Someplace to Be Flying, and I've done several of his books. I adore him, and I don't make mistakes when I read his books. I just go and go and go, and I never stumble because his writing just flows. And his whole thing is urban fairies, the medicine lands, the first people, shapeshifters, animal. So that has its own particular tone, right? Because you've got like this guy who's really a jackdaw. He's a corby, which is he's not just a bird. He's like ancient, but he's Jack, and he lives in a school bus on the edge of this deserted, blighted area of a city. So he talks a certain way, even though what he's talking about can be just as heightened as the most sort of epic fantasy, gods, goddesses, sword fight, blah, 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 but it's got a different tone. So for all of those authors or series, because an author can do a series with a very different tone.
Sure.
You just have to find that voice, and that's all about the world that they build. And it's amazing how immediately you can feel when the voice, the tone that you're using is wrong. You like say 5 words, you stumble, you make a mistake, you stop. You're like, yeah, no, this is no, this is not right.
Not there yet.
Once you find that the voice that fits the world, then you can just go.
That's fascinating to think about. There's a wrong that you can detect. I mean, not you both have been doing this long enough that I believe this, but it's for me, it's like fascinating that you can detect that it's wrong. You know, that even when you're creating that, you know,
it's kind of like showing up to a ball in cut-off jean shorts. It's like it might feel great on the street, but when you walk into the ballroom, you're like, yeah, I need to go change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Are there any unique challenges? I mean, with somebody brought up Brandon's work. Are there any unique challenges to his over others, or is it all kind of every challenge is unique?
I find, you know, I love the humor that he has in his series, and humor is always tricky because you have that fine. You don't want to give it away, but you have to allow the time for someone to laugh, and so that just takes more care, in a way, much more than say a fight scene, which is more about just getting around the syllables as fast as you can to keep the action clear. Humor is challenging. I love it. I mean, I live for those passages. But I think,
well, it's part of that. I mean, not to cut your thought, but the idea of humor. Yeah, I noticed you do kind of a pre-read in your process, or you read the work beforehand. Do you mark things like that? Like this is a moment where pause, or do you just, as you're reading it, it just comes out?
Because it's all about timing. It's really, you have to be in the moment, because what's the pace leading in? What's the pace leading out? Where does it fall within the chapter? Because sometimes it's the last line of a chapter or whatever, or a section, and it's like, okay, it will breathe by itself. Other times it's getting used to. Sometimes it's flipping the voices because it's the response and getting facile with, if I'm not familiar with that character, the next character especially, then it's like, okay, there'll be a break and figuring out how to keep it together and keep it tight, because timing is 9/10 of it in most cases.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
It's also fascinating when you're talking about like the sort of uniqueness of an author's voice, and you're talking about fantasy and what is the tone. If you look at the final 3 books in the Wheel of Time, I remember reading the first one that Brandon wrote, and being like, I don't quite know where I am. Like, this is the story, these are the characters, but the voice is different.
I had just finished doing the first Mistborn trilogy, because that was one of the things as he was writing that last volume, which became 3. Before that came out, well, let's just get Mistborn done, and they actually sent me book 3 before they sent me books 1 and 2, which was really bizarre. But so for me, I was very familiar with his voice, but it is very different than Robert Jordan's to a certain degree. And that is challenging.
I think it comes out in the humor.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Robert Jordan had a sense of humor, but I feel like his sense of humor is more like meat and potatoes. It's kind of like traditional, sort of solid, grounded sense of humor. And
Gotcha.
Brandon's younger. He's a younger person, and his mind works differently. He did not graduate from the Citadel. His humor is trickier, is more maybe brainy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes.
Well, he does the pratfall thing.
He does the pratfall, a lot of pratfall.
Let's see. I didn't even think about the unique challenge or how you would sense that. But of course, right? You had read Jordan's works up to that point, and then Brandon's comes in, and it's the same, like you said, same characters, but now it's a different tone.
Yeah.
How unique of a challenge that probably not many narrators will ever have, which is, having to finish off a series that had been so dominant in one tone. At that point, did you just change the tone to Brandon's tone? In other words, was it this kind of trying to not impose, but
No,
capture the tone you had before?
The writing itself, I mean, it isn't an apparent, I think if you didn't know someone, you would just notice how the action got kind of narrowed down a little bit, because a book, what was it, 9, that was leading into The Gathering Storm was, the action was very wide. And what Brandon tends to do is he focuses it down to fewer characters that you really are staying on top of. That's the big thing that I noticed in terms of the change.
I think I felt it particularly acutely because I'm doing the women's parts, and I sensed a real shift. And certainly over the course of doing all of the Sanderson titles that we've done over the years, I feel like his women have developed and grown richer and deeper and more humor.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting, because your reaction, I remember you talking about Way of Kings Prime, which he actually wrote before he did any of the Stormlight Archive, and you found, especially Navani, tremendously complex, and so enjoyable because of that. Which, again, he wrote that back
before, yeah, sure,
whatever it was, and
so slight adjustment. The different characters. So Navani in Rhythm of War is what I was talking about, finding really complex and fascinating. But that's also an age thing, because at different ages you relate to different characters.
Sure, yeah.
More or less.
I mean, very much so, right? Everyone in, I think, Wheel of Time, now reading it for the last 30 years, can say that they had favorites that have changed and morphed over the years just because of age and experience.
You start out identifying with the "I'm going to conquer the world," and you end up with the "get off my lawn" character.
That's exactly how it feels. Oh, yeah, I love Maureen now. I did not like her when I was 15.
Well, Baron is one of our favorite characters.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, for sure. Now, you also recently narrated the short, I want to say, novella that Daniel Green did, Breach of Peace. Also, and do you do a lot of novellas, or was this kind of a unique instance of kind of a shorter story that you've narrated?
We do quite a few.
Yeah.
And more since we've been working with independent authors. So we've done a bunch of really interesting, very, very short novellas, or collections of novellas for the independent authors. And they're the ones who hire us directly. They just go to our website, find us, fill out the form, and we start the project. And I think those are probably harder to shop to a publisher than a full length.
Yeah.
Is the novella process any different? Is it just the same,
No, it's just you don't have as much backstory. And I think that particular breach of that world that he's created is really fascinating.
Yeah, we want more.
We want more.
Yeah. You're hearing it, Daniel. Hopefully you're watching right now. They want more.
So
Get on it.
I'm thinking that that there's going to be demand for either a fuller length piece or something within that world.
Yeah.
Just a whole collection of novellas, kind of a bit like Wendell Berry does, in terms of he writes short stories around a world, and then there's not necessarily a direct connection between them, but it's that same world.
Yeah. I think his intent is, I think he's already writing the next one, and I think he's talking about doing a full length novel here afterwards. So. I'm sure he'll be really excited to hear that you're excited for the next one. Now I do want to let's switch gears from our state of Kramer and Reading. What's going on? This is becoming a family affair. right? I heard that during the pandemic, your son has now become a voice actor. Is that right?
He had started slightly before, but the timing was perfect in terms of when things started to really connect. I mean, I think he had been working for a couple of years, kind of more part-time, and then it really started to take off just as the pandemic hit, which was perfect timing in terms of everything else, because it is a job you can do at home, obviously.
Yeah, and he lost his restaurant job.
Yeah.
Was this always, have your kids ever shown interest? Is this the first interest that any of your children have shown?
Henry was born to do this.
Yeah.
Really?
I remember him sitting on my lap at 6 months old. It was one of those cardboard books, and it was, about 25 words in the whole thing, and I must have read it 20 times, and he just sat there, waiting for, in my lap, and I would flip the page and I would start to play around with the words. And I think one of his first words was purple, which was a result of that book. Because I used to play with that word. And all of a sudden, when you hear it, a month or so later, as he's starting to go into language, it was like, wow, okay. There are a number of special, I think, attributes that he's demonstrated early on with regard to his ear for story is quite amazing.
We used to call him Plot Boy.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
He can read like me. I'm a speed reader.
Yeah.
Michael reads at a glacial pace and retains absolutely everything. I speed read and retain very little sort of detail, but I have the whole thing in my head. Mm-hmm. He kind of combines the two. But at one point, my mother reminded me of this the other day. He had been supposed to read something, I guess, for school, and I was grilling him because he read it so quickly. I was like, well, no, you can't have really read it. You just flip the pages. Tell me about what the story is. And he was like, Mom, so and he related the entire plot, like to a T. And I'm like, okay, yep, you read it.
Yeah. A picture of Christmas was always, we made sure that we always give the kids books for Christmas, but a fixture was always about the third present in, he would open up a book. And then we would take a 20-minute pause because he would just sit with the book and start to read it. There's a mountain of presents from, grandparents and us and whatever. No, the book is the thing. Yeah.
I totally get that, because I remember I'm really good at saying no as a parent, except around books. And I didn't know that was going to be the case. I should have. But my daughter would come in to me at like 12 o'clock at night. She'd wake me up and she'd say, can you buy me another Kindle, like a book for my Kindle? And she was really young, and I'd be like, yes. I'm just like, I'm kind of wiping away some sleep, like, bought, there you go, enjoy, so yeah, I get that from the perspective of giving those gifts, if you will.
Yeah. So it's been so fantastic to watch him kind of bloom into this skill, this art form that he's just so naturally suited to, and
he has a great instrument,
terrific instrument. Oh. And because he's young, he's got like energy,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And whatever, you just did 57 hours in the studio for Rhythm of War. You've knocked out Don Shard. You're doing all this stuff. You still got this going.
And we have to husband our energy. Yeah. This guy, because he's either recording in an apartment, or he's recording in a basement of a house. He's got access to two different setups. But often he's doing books from midnight to 6 a.m.
Wow.
And that would kill me. Yeah. So it's been lovely. He's been getting hired, both independent and companies are hiring him, and it's just thrilling to see it take off.
Yeah, that's great. I know I think the admins will, I don't know if they've already posted his link. You can, if you're interested in the work that he's doing, you can go check him out. I think it's Henry kwkramer.com is where you can find it. We'll post that link here in the chat. So yeah, if you want to check his work out, I can't wait to hear. I think what you need to do is you need to come back next year around this time. We need to do the state of Kramer and Reading again. And I need to hear more about what's going on with Henry. Now, if you're just tuning into this, know that here in the next 15, 20 minutes, we're going to get to a live reading that Kate and Michael are going to do for us. So stick around for that. And I'll remind you again that we are raising funds for Books to Prisoners. If you check them out, you can go in and donate, anything you have. I get that this is a very difficult time of the year, so if you can't, that's fine. But if you can and you can afford to donate some money towards this cause, it's a wonderful cause. And just make sure if you do, just for the purposes of, so we can kind of know how much we've raised today and just be excited about that together, make sure to send a little receipt at the end to one of us in Discord, here at the Dusty Wheel, or on social media, and we'll try to collect all those so we can kind of give you an update here in about a half an hour. So now I want to jump to this. I don't know if this makes you blush or not. When I asked fans on Instagram, like, hey, do you have any questions for Kate and Michael? I did get some questions, but it's funny, I asked for questions, and these were a lot of the comments I got. They said, thank you for putting so much love, care, and thought into these characters we love. Another fan also said, no questions, just tell them I love them, and they got me through 2020. One fan wrote, superheroes, I love these two so much. Another fan wrote, these two are my comfort voices. Every time they pop up on an audiobook, I get excited. Thank you two so much. Another fan wrote, they live inside me. Amazing artistry here. And another fan wrote, I've never read the series. I've only listened to the series on audio, and Kramer and Reading were a huge part of bringing this amazing story to life. Another fan said, just to tell them both what true talents they are. Not many have the ability to bring a book alive. Thanks for many hours of entertainment. And another fan wrote, love their voices and how they bring characters to life. It's clear just how much fans love you, that when asked, what would you like to know? They just want you to know that they love you and that they really appreciate the work you do. Was that something, Kate, that you saw coming when you started doing this? When you got into narration, did you anticipate the difference it would make in people's lives?
I have to say, it doesn't surprise me because I've been a theater actor for many years, and it's a different mode of delivering a story, but theater audiences also attach to actors and feel a sense of both ownership over them, but also gratitude for an effectively delivered story, especially one that hits them in their heart. And the huge difference for me between theater and narrating audiobooks, until social media kind of grew, morphed, ate us all, is the response in the theater is immediate. The person is right there in person. You can hear them gasp. You can hear them cry. You can hear them laugh. And with audiobooks, it's like I sit in a box and I read a book and it goes out there and I don't hear a single word about it. Once we started engaging on social media, then it was like, people would handwrite fan letters and mail them occasionally beforehand. Got so much easier to hear from people. And especially the Wheel of Time and Brandon Sanderson fans have just been extraordinarily generous with us. They're so loving, they're so appreciative. And I think a big part of that is because they love those characters and we're voicing those characters. It's sort of a phenomenon, and we love engaging with the fans. This one guy, our daughter Viv is an extraordinary person who has like this particular tender spot for farmers and anyone sort of living in rural areas. And one guy wrote to us and said, I'm on my tractor all day I'm just driving across the field back and forth. And if it weren't for you guys, I don't know that I'd be able to do it. And I showed her that. She was, oh,
Yeah, I bet. Michael, have you had any experiences where you just think back on, like, you were just surprised by the reaction? You know, you didn't anticipate that a reaction to a particular, book or narration you had done.
Well, I think I've related this maybe last time, but to me it was when Memory of Light came out. I think it was the third post on Audible. Was a young man who had said that he had dyslexia. He had fallen out of, basically he was really down on himself, partly because of possibly the ridicule he was getting or the frustration he had. Everybody else can read without a problem. What's wrong with me? Yeah. Which is such a central theme to a degree of the fantasy genre to begin with. But have, the hearing the story, getting hooked on that story to the point where it's like that became his motivation to learn to read. And then from there it was, and then I'm going to do this and, get myself through high school, get myself to college. I'm going to continue to do that. I think, and then created a life for himself. I forget because I take it for granted, and this reminds me of, I don't know what it's like not to be able to read.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, whether I'm blind or have, dyslexia or any other issue that would stop me from reading. And it's such an important gateway to engaging with the world. And so I have often gone out, I continue to work with the National Library Service, talking books for the blind and print disabled. And occasionally we've actually went out to the library, Braille library out in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. And the people who come in and are just, you're treated like a rock star because for them, you're the gateway to the world, whether it's a magazine, whether it's a book, whether it's whatever it happens to be. And you forget that. And I have felt that this year with regard to the people who stock the groceries in my store.
Yeah.
They are the heroes. That was when this pandemic came in back in February, March. My big fear was who's going to harvest the food and are they going to be able to keep us supplied? And these are the heroes of today. They're my heroes. They're out there every day, as the masses come in, whether they choose to wear a mask or not, or whatever kind of precautions they're taking. Yep. They're out there making sure that we have food. And for some people, reading, is as important to them as the food they eat on their table. And you forget that until all of a sudden it's threatened.
Yeah.
That and well, this might morph into that next section. An old theater friend from way like 10, 15 years ago, did a couple of shows. I never worked with him specifically, but he worked for many, many, many years as a lawyer and then just started writing. Well, he's written some really wonderful things. And all of a sudden he's like, I think I want to make an audio, get an audio book. So he approached us because he knew us through whatever, and then saw the webpage and stuff. And his book won an award. The audio book of that book was nominated for an award. I don't know. I'm not sure when the award ceremony will come, but it's like that to watch people grow as artists is exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, later this summer, I'll be doing Jacob Cooper's part 2 of the trilogy, I believe. But, I'm so fascinated because I've been doing some of the novellas and short stories in the prequel, and to see him, to see the writing grow, to see that voice mature is just exciting, because that's, and sometimes we, with a lot of authors, you're not in dialogue. With Jacob and I, we were in dialogue a lot with regard to certain things, and it's exciting to see them, blossom in this. And now, especially with the way production, in the old days, we only have so many print presses, and we only have so many tape players. Well, with print and with digital, download both print and audio, it's like those gates are now broken. They're busted wide open. So you need, to a certain degree, a little bit of gatekeeping in that. I'm hoping now there'll be a rebirth of editors, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff that needs some really good editing. It's like, this is a really good story idea, but boy, oh boy, an editor could really do would be of great benefit to that. But it's exciting now because there can be so many different stories out there. It isn't just, the 20 particular publishing houses or the 20 particular audio publishing houses. It's like, no, it's wide. It's the wild, wild west out there. So
yeah, I think, and I love that, like you said, that you're able to see that kind of flourish from all the work that you've been doing and just the influence others are having that will go out and try these things. Why can't my voice be heard out there? Kate, one time it was a quote. You're both very quotable, and that is to say, I listened to you and I'm like, shoot, I need to write that quote up. And I think this was from a conversation you were having with the Malkier Talks podcast. You were talking with Rob and Dana and Vance. And I want to bring up this quote that you brought up because it ties into this conversation. You said, knowledge is power. We like to know we belong to a community, and sometimes knowledge is the coin we have to pay to belong to that community. When you have a really intense community of belonging, then those coins are really scrutinized. And this was related to pronunciation. And I know, it's a great quote.
Your muse visited you, I guess.
Yeah. My muse occupies most of my head.
No, it was a great quote. It was around that idea of pronunciation and fans trying to find, holding on to a pronunciation itself and finding something almost sacred. Why do, from your perspective as a narrator of books, why do we do that? Why do we hold on to something like this is the right way to either understand who this character is, what they look like, or what they sound like?
Well, I think, there's so much uncertainty in most people's lives and in the world that you want to be sure of something. You want to know there's one way and I know it, as opposed to, well, could be any one of, 5, 10 different. I can't live with that. I need to know. I need to be sure.
Well, and it's also the coin of authenticity. And this gets difficult, especially when things are set in more obscure areas. If you're from that area and somebody mispronounces the name of a town, all of a sudden everything gets called into question. It's like, does he really know what he's talking about? Because if he knew what he was talking about, he would know that in Minnesota, we say Monticello. It's not Monticello, it's Monticello. That's the city. There's a prison there. It's like, so it gets, the correct, a correct pronunciation is a stamp of authenticity in terms of that. The Midwestern part of me screams sometimes, though, because there is an Eastern bias for pronunciation. You can say patina, you can say patina, you can say potato, you can no. But so because it is partly regional. Where did you grow up?
Do you belong here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question of, do you belong? And I think that is that's the difficulty when we're talking about so many, like this story has touched so many lives across the world. so many different nations, tongues, peoples, as they say, right? And this question of do you belong? It is an interesting one, I think, for fandom itself, especially for Wheel of Time fandom with the show coming out. When you think about just pronunciations itself, there is a little bit of like, yeah, maybe you've listened to the audiobooks, but you haven't read the books themselves. Maybe you've read the books, but you've never listened to the audiobooks, or maybe you just never read the glossary, or it's just a really funny thing that happens in Wheel of Time fandom. But I like this question of, it comes from this desire to feel like you belong to something.
Yeah.
And then identifying if you think something else does belong to.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a quote about that. If someone says something and mispronounces a word, it's because they encountered it reading. So don't look down on them. Just
that's a
correct pronunciation. But
yeah.
if you don't hear it, if it's not a common word in your circle, and that's oftentimes a function of class.
Yeah.
Because unless that is discussed on a regular basis in your household, why would you know how to pronounce that particular word? It's a French word. Well, what does it have to do with anything that your daily life has? So.
Yeah, and I didn't write this quote up, but you did also say this, Kate. You said, and this is to all of Wheel of Time fandom and maybe Sanderson fandom, maybe all fandoms where you've ever narrated. You said you are entirely free to pick your own pronunciations. I think that's how it should be. So there you go. If you ever want a stamp of approval from the voices of the Wheel of Time, Michael, Kramer, and Kate Reading are give it to you. You're entirely free to have your own pronunciations and still belong. That's the key part of that. You still belong to this community. So. Now, Michael, you also had a quote that I thought from the same podcast interview was really fascinating. It came from this discussion. So I'm going to read this one to you. You said, when you first encounter that character, there's just a way that name can feel right. And we deal in sound. We're used to dealing with sound. It's something else to see it in print. It's a bit like seeing a note as a musician. And even though the composer hears it, you play it. You make that note into music. And I've always thanked Robert Jordan for letting us make those decisions. And this idea of you got to, he never kind of questioned you on how to pronounce these things. Why was it so important? You said you thanked him that he let you make those decisions. Why did you think that was important?
Part of it, I think, has to do with we work in sound. So we are, to that degree, akin to a musician. And how that word strikes the ear, how that sound wave hits the sternum, has an impression, has an impact. It's why poetry should always be read aloud. You shouldn't read it. Even when you're reading it to yourself, read it aloud, because hearing the words changes your experience of the piece. And I would say, with regard to that, I don't know that if you went to say, if you had a cello piece and you went to Yo-Yo Ma, would you tell him exactly how to phrase that particular half note, how to voice it with the bow? Or would you trust he's going to sense the artistry that's necessary? He's going to have more experience with that. You might create, as a composer, the structure for that particular thing, but he's going to know in fine detail how that particular note should be voiced. And that can be incredibly important to the effect of the piece. The other thing is, and I don't know, I'm somewhat well-read, I would say, but not greatly well-read, but sometimes, especially for beginning writers, they might be using words, or especially when in the fantasy world where they're making up names. And I know what that name is a reference to. I know particularly like that's based on a Greek god, or you know that that's a myth from the Mayans or whatever.
Right.
And if they're not aware of that, then that could be something that's in their subconscious, but they may not be consciously aware of that. Whereas I am, and I know what that image may be evoking, and so
it really annoys him.
so it's a question of, do you want that image? Do you want that? Think of it as, do you want to have the cinnamon flavor in your wine, or do you want the onion flavor in your wine? Sure. As an overtone, as something that floats in that name, in that word, in that term that you've created. And I think narrators, because especially once you've worked for a number of years, you're going to have a better idea of what the effect of the sound is going to have. The nuance that is going to, how that's going to play. Partly it's, can I make, what am I trying to do with this name? Because oftentimes that's part of the reason it was chosen to begin with, because the name, Tolkien chose Sauron, like they're Sauron. There are certain sounds, certain sibilances, certain whatever phonetics that were chosen deliberately because of the effect that they have.
Sure. And Kate, do you end up, does this particular side of the narrating also, for you, is it really impactful? Is understanding the words, or like the root of certain words when it comes to inflection and how you perform those things? Do you find yourself also in there, and do you go back to content creators and say, or the authors and say, did you mean this? Or do you just kind of go with what you are feeling in that moment?
Are you talking about fantasy words?
Yeah, like fantasy words themselves, like Sauron, or for example, or some word that has a root elsewhere, to find out if you need that cinnamon or the onion. Were they intending for it to be associated with that word, or were they just using some random word they just came up with?
Yeah, we're fortunate in that I feel like most of the material that we get to read is good enough that there is a sort of solid foundation that those words grow from. So it doesn't, I'm not sure that I've ever really read a book that was so bad where I was like, this is just random, meaningless.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Occasionally you'll come across a word and it's got really fancy spelling, which looks great in print, but you're like, if I follow the phonetics of this spelling, even though it's got 15 letters, it sounds like Brian. Was that your intention? You want this character to be called Brian, even though it's spelled like DXHRYHEANNE? It's like, yeah, but it's Brian. Is that what you want? Because that's funny, but the print reader isn't necessarily going to know that. Because the print eye is like, oh, look at this name. And they might not ever say it aloud to themselves. So that's another really funny kind of intersection of fantasy and print, and then the process of making it oral.
Well, I think part of it has to do with so much of fantasy and science fiction is trying to look at themes and ideas in a fresh way, and so if you're presented with a name, oftentimes that's an elaborate spelling of, say, Roger or whatever, it's like, well, it's Roger. If I just say Roger, that's not removing you. That's not stripping away anything. That's Roger lives in the world every day. But if I roll that R, if I do something with it just to make it not quite, just not something quite so familiar, so that I'm not, the reader is not putting the character into the box that the author is clearly trying to take him out of.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right.
That's and so sometimes that's my goal. It's like, yeah, I know this is I can pronounce this, Alistair, but you want it heightened. You want because you don't want it to be just any old Alistair, Alistair. You want
Yeah.
to have a freshness to it, a difference to it that is different, to take it out of the immediate world, because that's what fantasy is about. Um,
Yeah, I love that. I never thought about that, which is that the intent obviously is they're not going to just be Roger that they met yesterday at the store or something. And by, even though you might pronounce it that way, giving it something more will let the reader disassociate with that person they met yesterday at the store and go on with the fantasy world that's been here. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, great. I love the insight into the process. By the way, if you're here and you're watching this, we are about to have Michael and Kate do a reading. And I don't think you will have ever heard this reading before, because if I remember correctly, remind me, but Michael and Kate, you have never, you didn't do an audio of this, correct? Yeah, so this is the Ravens Prologue. So the Ravens Prologue, if you're unfamiliar, it was an additional prologue put into the young adult literature paperback from Two Rivers. And it's actually included now in like the re-released Eye of the World. They actually included it as a second prologue. Mm-hmm. So we found a section here that I think it's really apropos, I think, to the TV series coming out. And so these wonderful people are going to give us a live reading of that. So everyone, please enjoy this.
Master Althor smiled at the boys to soften the shock of what he had said, but he went on. The Age of Legends hadn't so much as the memory of war, so they say. But once the Dark One touched the world, they learned fast enough. This wasn't a war like those you hear about when the merchants come for wool and tobacco between two nations. This war covered the whole world. A war of the shadow. It came to be called. Those who stood for the light faced as many who stood for the shadow. And besides dark friends beyond counting, there were armies of Myrddraal and Trollocs greater than anything the Blight spewed up during the Trolloc Wars. Aes Sedai went over to the shadow too. They were called the Forsaken.
Egwene shivered and was glad to see some of the boys wrapping their arms around themselves. Mothers used the Forsaken to frighten their children when they were bad. If you keep lying, Semirhage will come and get you. Lanfear waits for children who steal. Egwene was glad her mother did not do that. Wait, the Forsaken had been Aes Sedai? She hoped Master Althor did not say that too freely, or the women's circle would come calling on him. Anyway, some of the Forsaken were men, so he had to be wrong.
You'll be expecting me to tell you about the glories of battle, but I won't. For a moment he sounded grim, but only for a moment. No one knows anything about those battles, except that they were huge. Maybe the Aes Sedai have some records, but if they do, they don't let anyone see them except other Aes Sedai. You've heard about the great battles during Arthur Hawkwing's rise and during the War of the 100 Years? 100,000 men on each side? Eager nods answered him. From Egwene, too, though hers was not eager. All those men trying to kill one another did not excite her the way it did the boys. Well, Master Althor went on, those battles would have been counted small in the War of the Shadow. Whole cities were destroyed, razed to the ground. The countryside outside the cities fared as badly. Wherever a battle was fought, it left only devastation and rain behind. The war went on for years and years, all over the world. And slowly the shadow began to win. The light was pushed back and back, until it appeared certain the shadow would conquer everything. Hope faded away like mist in the sun. But the light had a leader who would never give up. A man called Luz Theron Telamon, the dragon.
One of the boys gasped in surprise. Egwene was too busy goggling to see who. She forgot even to pretend that she was offering water. The dragon was the man who had destroyed everything. She did not know much about the breaking of the world, well, almost nothing, in truth, but everybody knew that much. Surely he had fought for the shadow.
Lews Theron gathered men around him, the 100 companions, and a small army. Small as they counted such things then. 10,000 men. Not a small army now, would you say? The words seemed to an invitation to laugh, but there was no laughter in Master Althor's quiet voice. He sounded almost as though he had been there.
Egwene certainly did not laugh, and none of the boys did either. She listened and tried to remember to breathe.
With only a forlorn hope, Lews Theron attacked the valley of Thakandar, the heart of the shadow itself. Trollocs in the hundreds of thousands fell on them. Trollocs and Myrddraal. Trollocs live to kill. A Trolloc can rip a man to pieces with his bare hands. Myrddraal or death. Aes Sedai fighting for the shadow rained fire and lightning on Lews Theron and his men. The men following the dragon did not die one by one, but 10 at a time, or 20, or 50. Beneath a twisted sky in a place where nothing grew or ever would again, they fought and died. But they did not retreat or give up. All the way to Shale Ghul they fought. And if Thakandar is the heart of the shadow, then Shale Ghul is the heart of the heart. Every man in that army died, and most of the 100 companions. But at Shale Ghul, they sealed the Dark One back into the prison the Creator made for him, and the Forsaken with him. And the world was saved from the Dark One.
Silence fell. The boys stared at Master Althor with wide eyes, shining eyes as if they could see it all, the Trollocs and the Myrddraal and Shale Ghul. Egwene shivered again. The Dark One and all the Forsaken are bound at Shale Ghul, bound away from the world of men, she recited to herself. She could not remember the rest, but it helped. Only, if the dragon had saved the world, how had he destroyed it?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that. I was watching all the comments. I had the chills the entire time. Oh, sheesh. So good. A lot of people are like, I've never even read this part and they're like, so this is all like new, greenfield kind of stuff for everyone, like listening to that. That was amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. That's, I saw somebody say if you've ever wanted to see, or like, this is a great advertisement for why you should pick up the audiobooks. I agree. Like, just listen to that. And that is, my daughter is actually listening and reading the book together. Like, she's reading it while she listens to you. And she borrowed it from the library, the audiobook. And I asked her, I was like, hey, so have you made any progress since the last time we talked? And she's like, no. It's like, oh, you were really going. She's like, yeah, but I don't have the audiobook, so I don't want to read anymore. So I was like, that is such a great, like, her experience of reading it and listening to it. I think she's going to do that for the rest of the series. And she's going to want that experience. And now that she feels like this experience is less because she can't hear you. So I'm like, okay, we need to fix that. That was so yeah, thank you very much for doing that. That was wonderful. And I wanted to update everyone about the what we've been doing today, which is raising some funds for Books to Prisoners. Taylor, we probably haven't tracked everything that's been donated up to this point, but we can confidently say, Taylor, I don't know if you want to post that on the screen for everyone that's watching. We can confidently say that so far fans have donated over $1,000 to Books to Prisoners. So thank you so much for everyone out there. You're awesome. Please keep donating here. Like we mentioned at the beginning, if you go buy some merch, then Jen, New Creations by Jen, is going to donate $5 to the same cause for every piece of, anyway, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but anyway, some of that money is going to go towards this cause, and they'll donate it. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say by midnight tonight if you end up buying some merch there. So yeah, if you still want to donate, please do. The link's in the description here. Yeah, but thank you to all the fans who have donated. Like I said, we'll collect it all. We'll get a final total. We'll post it just so you all know just how wonderful you've been here to donate during this very difficult time. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. I feel like that's all I can say here. Now, this last, we have just about 20 minutes left of the show. This is a live call-in talk show. I have questions from fans. So since I've already collected a bunch of questions from fans, I think it's best, let me ask you those, and if we end up we already have their questions. If we have time, we'll let fans call in. Sorry for those of you who are really excited to call in. It's just that we already have 20 questions here, and we only have about 20 minutes left. So let me ask you some of these, and then, like I said, if there is some time, we'll get a caller or two. So this first one is blink twice if you have a cameo in the Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. There's no blinking going on. I'm gonna get the zero in afterwards and make sure there was no blinking. I know you've talked about this before. I'm sure the answer hasn't changed yet. But would you answer the call if they wanted you to be extras in the show?
In a heartbeat. That would be so much fun.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be looking, by the way, regardless if you just blinked or not. I know all the fans are gonna be looking at every window. Are Michael and Kate there? Yeah. You are the two people that I hear fans speak about most of wanting to see as extras in the show. So hopefully one day, to those out there. Now, your theater roots are well known, and especially if you go watch the last visit that Michael and Kate did here after this, go watch that video. It was last year. We talked all about their roots and how they got into narrating. But someone asked, do you have a memorable or favorite role in theater? So maybe, Michael, you want to go first. Is there a theater role that you look back on and you're like, this is my favorite?
I had 3 or 4. I got to play Clarence Darrow in Never the Sinner. I got to play Atticus in To Kill a Mockingbird. I got to play Dysart in Equus, and then in a wonderful play I had a supporting role, but I adored the play called New Jerusalem. I played Ben Israel, who was basically a Jewish merchant in the city of Amsterdam. But I had, those were probably the top 4 recently. Yeah.
Wow. And for Kate, for you, do you have a memorable one or a favorite one?
Yeah, I say this again and again. I have a horror of naming favorites. I am just so in love with whatever it is that I am doing right now. And I have been blessed with so many amazing, amazing character roles in the theater. Just been extraordinarily grateful for the breadth of the different characters that I've played. And that includes animals and objects.
By the way, I was seeing in chat, I'm seeing some people get really upset that I said extras in the show. They said they want you to be the narrators of the Wheel of Time and Amazon Prime show and like recurring characters, which I agree with. I think you should be recurring characters and the narrators of the show. I was going for if the extras, they were not very happy that I even alluded to the idea that it would only be extras. So, so when it comes to silly voices, a fan asked, are there ever like a silly voice you had to do and then you just couldn't stop laughing? Like one that was just really tough to get through? And maybe like tell fans a little bit about it if there was one.
I don't know that there's a voice that cracks me up that I have. That there's some of my favorites. I mean, Wayne is a fun voice, but there's nothing. And Lopen is a fun voice to do, but there's nothing funny about that. There was a character voice, and I only pull this one out very rarely. But Donnelly Westlake wrote a book called, it's in the Dortmunder series called Drowned Hopes, and it's the rights have been pulled and it's been reissued, so you can't find it anywhere. But there's the leading character in that voice always makes me smile.
Yeah.
Because it's not kid. So yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I saw in chat, I haven't listened to the audiobooks for Brandon's books, but someone asked Pattern. Does Pattern have a silly voice? I don't know if Pattern has a sound or the character Pattern from his books.
Pattern. So Pattern.
Is that...
Pattern's really fun. I mean, I'm notorious for cracking myself up. So there are, yes, when I do silly voices, I often make myself laugh. There's actually, I'm doing independent authors, royalty share projects, and then commercial companies. In the royalty share projects bucket, Michael and I did a joint project for Blake Arthur Peel called The Fall of Radiance, which has 5 books, which are now available on a box set. And then another of our Athon royalty share projects is one that I'm doing called The Trade Point Saga by J.J. Blacklock. Just so fun because it's interplanetary species. So there is no limit. There is absolutely no limit. There are these great descriptions of these characters. Some of them are covered in fur and some of them look like stork birds. And so it's just, I read the description and I pay a lot of attention to the description. And then it's like whatever comes out of my mouth, that's the voice. And there's this one race that I particularly love. They're called the Beng, and they make a lot of trouble for everybody. But the reason they make a lot of trouble for everybody is because nobody respects them. So you understand this is a vicious descending spiral cycle that nobody is ever going to escape from. But the Beng talk like this, and they're like, respect the Beng. And whenever JJ tweets something about the series, I always reply in all caps as though I am the Beng, because she is not being respectful. This is not worthy of the Beng.
Okay, we all have to hear this now. So what does this remind us? What is this called so we can look this up? What's the series?
J.J. Blacklock's Trade Point Saga.
Okay.
The first 2 books are Refuge and Aftershock. And the third one is called The Bereft. And it is on my to-do list. And I am trying desperately to shoehorn it in.
That's a bit
because the print has already come out, and usually we try to get those. But
but this is a good segue to, sometimes in my head I'm like, oh, that Wheel of Time and Brandon's work must take forever. And I know you have other commercial work and independent work that you do. Is it work that comes to you? Like people just knock on your door for it, or do you go out and audition for certain roles? I don't know how that works, so I'm just kind of curious.
It's a whole combination. So we have, how long have we known some of these companies? 30 years. So we have long-standing relationships with a lot of the commercial publishers. Mm-hmm. And so even though there can be some turnover, in some cases it's the same person at the same company that we've known for 30 years. And so they'll send us a book and they'll say, are you available to do this book? And that's one way we get work. And then the other way is we have a page on our website called Hire Us. It has a form if an author wants to hire us and pay us our hourly rate to record their book. They fill out the form, they send it in, we start going with the project. That's the other way. And then there's like a third way. And I'm so excited. Michael's going to be doing some poetry by Daniel Pereira, who I saw him. He posted something on Twitter and I engaged with him and I loved his response. So I went to his website and I read his poetry. And then I commented back, if you want Michael to read your poetry, just get in touch with us. And he did. Mm-hmm. And so Michael's going to record his poetry. And that's another more unusual, rarer way that we get work. There are writers that both of us would like maybe not kill to record their work, but do some serious damage, right? Kneecap, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. in order to,
Yeah.
and you can reach out, you can approach people and say, I see that you wrote this book. Who is that guy we met we found his books in a guest house we were staying at in New Orleans. And I think he's right here. Just this like amazing writer has all these print books that have been published, and they're just sitting on the audio rights. And we tried and tried and tried to make it happen, and it wouldn't happen. It's a shame because his writing is really good.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there your projects coming up that might be of interest to viewers, things that you've just recently put out as far as independent works or commercial works?
My list.
Yeah, there's got to be a list there.
It's
and then
hard.
if you want to give us a hint on who are some authors you would like to be the narrators of, we have lots of fans out here that would probably go out and help out, like bring us Michael and Kate.
Well, in the world, independent and royalty share is Mythborn 4. Mythborn, not Mistborn.
Oh, okay.
Vijay Lakshman. And then Dawn Shard will be coming out any minute. Daniel Green's Breach of Peace.
And then Sanderson's Way of Kings Prime, which do we know how that is going to be released?
I don't know how that's being released, because that might be going to the people. I know that it's destined for people who are part of the Kickstarter. I don't know.
But there's going to be mayhem if people who didn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think they're going to make it available, but we don't.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And then
Brandon.
another one of our independent authors is a woman named Becky Bowen. And I read this book of hers, independent author who hired me, A Light on Altered Land. Just gorgeous. An older lesbian love story, and it's wrapped up in issues of aging and culture and history. And it includes a road trip across the country to pick up and deliver some Rick Simpson CBD oil. So it's kind of got everything.
It's got a little bit of everything.
I had such a great time recording that. It was just unusual because you don't see a lot of books written about older lesbians and their history, and their sense of culture. So I was fascinated with that. Another book that I did recently, just wrapped it, and it's on its way. It's in the the Dr. Seuss kind of like tubular conveyor belt thing that something else gets spat out. It's in there. It's called Conduct Books and the History of the Ideal Woman by Tabitha Kenlon. And she wrote this academic book. She researched conduct books, conduct manuals, which started out as a court etiquette for men, how to behave at court. And then it became this way of kind of critiquing women's behavior and telling women what they could and couldn't do or should and shouldn't do. And they have the gist of the book, which is hilarious and smart and so informative, is that essentially not much has changed in about 600 years. Women are still being told what they should and shouldn't do.
Right,
so that was really cool. And then we have a joint project coming up by Wiley Hayden called Soul Mirrors. And then you're next on the side.
Well, and then
skipped you.
Right. No, then I've got a prequel to The Prince's Errand by Daniel and Robert Zangari, called Prisoner of Tartalum, is going to be coming out very shortly, probably within the next 6 weeks. And then...
so then I have a book called Mavis by Chris Safarova, who's this fascinating woman. She's a Russian woman. She's a concert pianist. She runs this company that basically educates people in business management, business strategy. And she's kind of inventing this whole new literary genre, the business novel, mystery, whodunit. The first one that we did for her, which we did as a joint project, kind of covers financial strategies, is called Turquoise Eyes, and that's up and available on Audible. Mavis is sort of a sequel to Turquoise Eyes. And then Michael's also doing a couple of short guides that she has written on
basically business management strategies during pandemics.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy to hear just like the wide range of what
Right?
you're working on.
It's nut. And then you have Doubt and Debt, which
that's
so the guy that Michael mentioned earlier, the theater friend who was a lawyer
John
for many years
Feast.
and became John Feast. So Doubt and Debt is number 3.
That's number 3. Yeah, there was Night Rain Tokyo, and then Blind Trust, and now Doubt and Debt will be coming out later this summer.
And then Michael has another of Chris Safarova's books called Succeeding as a Management Consultant, which is a tech sort of nonfiction book.
Yeah.
And then I have Brad Beaulieu. I took over the narration of his Shattered Sands series with Twisted Trees, and then Jackals at the Walls. And this book coming up is called Desert Torn Asunder. So that, and talk about like unique fantasy voices. Totally different world. Ships that sail on the desert. Clay golems that rise, and fantastic. And then Michael's doing Daniel Pereira's poetry. And
I cannot believe how much you guys are working on. Are you finding the time for this?
Mitchell Hogan, the third book in the Necromancer series. The first one was
Corruption.
No, Corruption was the second book, and that's just out. Subversion is the third one, which I'll be finishing up very early this week in terms of my reading. The first one was something with a shun at the end. I remember it off the top of my head. I really like his writing a lot. He's an Australian. He's written a number of different series, but he has a very interesting take, and the themes that he's dealing with are very interesting. So
So, if fans want to go find a list of these, are they on your website? All the ones you just read off. I mean, will fans know fans know where to go look for some things that you've already done? What's the best place for them to find if they just want to see all the works that you've published?
So on our website, in the not to be too unsubtle about it, in the Buy Our Books page, we list all of our royalty share projects. So that's a place where you can see all of those books listed together. Otherwise, it's like just go on Audible and search for narrator.
Right, or type in, Michael Kramer or Kate Reading audiobooks, and you'll get a list of however many there are. I
think I just saw in live chat here that someone just did that, looked up Michael alone and saw 300 results on audible.com. So there you go. There's 300 results on audible.com for works.
And that doesn't include all the ones that the rights have been pulled because we've been doing this for so long. So
yeah, right. I do want to ask you just a quick more. I know we only have a few minutes left here. I did see a question show up in chat. It said, how's Kate, this is for you. How's your world dominations plans progressing? How are your domination plans progressing?
We have merch. The plans are going just fine.
Well said.
We planted a forest in the backyard. We're going to control climate change. One plot at a time.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That is the other piece of the state of Kramer and Reading, what you've been up to in your backyard. Planting a forest. Where did that even come from? You just figured you would?
From the flood.
Yeah. Partly from the flood. And part of it is actually one of the therapeutic things you need to do as a narrator. And this is for an aspiring narrator and also for people who spend lots of time with screens.
Like here.
like right here, is you need to get up from your screen, take your glasses off, and just look as far into the distance as you can, because your eye muscles need to be exercised and or relaxed, because if you focus, I know that after about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just working, it's like I need to go out and I will try to look at the farthest tree I planted and see if I can see any of the leaves or birds in it. But it's actually very good for your eyes to do that.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that. I like that you just, yeah, for any of those out there, obviously we're on the tech.
Yeah.
Make sure you step outside today and
Step outside, look into the distance.
look at some trees, check out some birds. Yeah, taking the view, exactly. So there were a couple more questions here. I think this one's a really interesting one, and it should be really quick to throw in here. What's the greatest number of takes you've ever had in the booth where you just, to get the take you wanted, how many did it take? Do you know this number? Is that
No, but
It can be in the dozens.
yeah,
dozens?
it can. You can have.
You need to like go outside and
Right.
look at a tree for
Right.
a while.
Well, it's especially frustrating when you think you're almost there, and then that one little hiccup hits literally the last syllable. You know, something drops out of your teeth and hits your larynx, and all of a sudden you're choking, and it's like all I needed to say was "ick," and you know, there are sentences when I can remember doing a book on Raoul Wallenberg where I had 7 different languages in this one particular sentence, and my head was just about ready to explode, because as I would come to each of the words, I'd have to is this the Spanish? Okay, this is, you know, and then is this the French? Because then all of a sudden I'm doing something different. Is this the Italian? And they were all there. Throw in a few Russians, and the Poles are the worst. You know, and you think it wouldn't be that hard, but then to make it sound like you actually are relaxed and relating something, as opposed to a second grader sounding out a word. And the great thing about it is you just have to forget it. I mean, it is not about saying saying the word correctly so much as telling the story, and how are you telling the story. And if it takes 25 takes to get through one particular sentence, somebody will bless you, and you'll get through the next 5 sentences without, you know, having to do anything.
I think one of the sentences that I had the highest number of takes on was I recorded Roald Dahl's Matilda at the Library of Congress, and I was working with a monitor, so I can see the person on the other side of the glass who's actually operating the equipment, and all I'm doing is narrating. And it's the scene where Mrs. Trunchbull picks a student up she's got 2 braids, right? She's got 2 plaits. She picks the student up by a plait and whirls her around her head, releases at just the right moment, because she was a discus thrower or a shot putter in her youth. And the girl flies over the playground fence and lands on the other side. Could not, without laughing. Just could not. And if I wasn't laughing, the monitor was, and then I would start laughing. And so I think that took us like half an hour to record one sentence.
It's especially disappointing when you're working with a monitor and they're queuing up and you're hearing yourself, and just the anticipation, so that as the light goes on to record, the first thing that comes out of your mouth is laughter. You're like, oh, okay, let's go back.
By the way, I'm seeing lots of calls for like a charity, blooper reel or something here. Do you have any, like, a number of blooper takes? I'm seeing a lot of people like, I would buy that for charity right now. So this one is kind of outside. Maybe again, I know you have to go at this point, but at the end of this question, that's unrelated to narrating. What's the key to a happy marriage?
So I was thinking about this today as I was, after I took my shower to get ready for this, most of the time the bathroom simply doesn't get cleaned. And then I'll go and I'll take a shower And I get out of the shower and I go, oh, this is disgusting. And I start cleaning the bathroom. And then, of course, the towel falls off because I'm like, so I'm standing there naked in the bathroom, scrubbing the toilet and cleaning the sink and doing everything and thinking about this question and feeling like if there's any key, I don't know that we have a key, there's plenty of times we're not happy and blessed with all of the times that we are. But I was thinking, it's like you got to find a balance between responsibility and empathy, right? So you got to be responsible. You got to like bring the best of yourself that you can, and everybody kind of has a duty to call out irresponsibility. If somebody is falling short, if somebody is like being lazy or selfish or just mean, you kind of have a duty to sort of not let that slide. But then you also have to have empathy. So you have to go, you know what? It drives me crazy when X happens, but it really makes him happy. So I gotta also try to see it from his point of view, and that will help me not do something that will make him unhappy. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. Before you give me yours, Mike, I love the Wheel of Time theme there of like the balance between, it's like you have to find balance, which I think is a great way, but between responsibility and empathy. That's great advice. Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
No, communication is the first thing, just because it is amazing how many times each of us thinks we have told the other person something
very clearly,
and that is not what the other person heard, and not even just the words, it's just not the way they interpret. Oh, you meant that. And that's where when the train is hurtling off the tracks, to go back to that, it's like, okay, oh, that's what you meant? Oh, if that's the case. And then you're like, well, can I take back the last 30 seconds of whatever I just said and like erase that from the world? No, you can't do that. It's out there in the world. It's blooming. It's, squished, whatever. I mean, that has a lot to do with it. And then, trust that the person is trying to do the best job they can.
I love that.
And they will blow you away, because sometimes the best that they can is something you can't even imagine doing. And sometimes it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, they're trying. It isn't it isn't the way you would do it. It isn't, you could do it 5 times better maybe, or faster or whatever, but that's how they chose to do it. And there was that book, both my parents and my brother and his wife, it's what
Getting the Love You Need.
But there's like the 5, it's a very interesting thing in terms of rating. There are 5 ways of showing affection, and
sure.
Whether it's
5 love languages.
Love languages, yeah.
And that's was a very illuminating book, because you can think that what you're doing is expressing something very clearly, and that's speaking a language that person doesn't either value or understand. And so it's like you've just spent 2 hours speaking Chinese to someone who can't understand it. It's not their fault, and it's not your fault, but just realize that can be happening. So get to the root of that. And that's why the communication is so important, because it's like, sometimes a touch can communicate something, and sometimes it can't. Sometimes words can communicate something. Sometimes a written note can communicate something that those same words spoken don't mean anything. So that to me is, it's
I feel like you both need to come up with.
It's going to be a sine wave. It's not all going to be up on the top. There's a wonderful book. What is it? Thomas Moore wrote it, Care of the Soul. And he put it in terms of the seasons. You got to go through winter. So much work happens in winter. So much happens in the dark times that allows for spring and summer. You have to, so embrace it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared. I mean, and that leads me into the one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit today, which is, 2 years ago, I got hearing aids. I should have gotten them probably 7 to 10 years ago. One of the themes of Rhythm of War is healing. And I would just encourage people, everyone, and it's hard, because the thing that you sometimes that you are so scared of or afraid of, or you think there's a stigma on, it's like, if I was having trouble seeing, I'd go to the eye doctor in a heartbeat. You can't look at me and see that I need glasses. You can't know that. Only I will know that. And you would be like, why don't you go see an eye doctor if you can't see? Well, we all suffer from something, whether it's mental, physical, whatever, where to reach out is one of the hardest things to do. And I would encourage people to do that. Because these hearing aids changed my life.
Change both of your lives.
And there was certainly no stigma around it in anybody's eyes, probably except my own, and or laziness.
How did you lose your hearing? How did you lose your hearing?
Well, it's partly the hearing is affected partly genetically. My father had difficulty hearing later in his life, but also growing up, never wore ear protection. So now when I see somebody operating a power tool or a lawnmower or whatever, it's like, put your hearing protection on. I mean, that's my one step for that particular thing. But there are so many things that I think people are confronting, and most of the time, I think if they would make this, if they, and then realize that if someone is making that step to try to find help, they need so much encouragement.
Yeah.
Because for them, the biggest mountain is the one inside their own head most times. So you don't know the hill or the mountain or the cliff that they've just climbed to get to that point. And I would encourage everyone to do that. You can do it in a small way, but just to do that. Because the sounds of 5 years that I lost, I would love to get back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a great way to end this, which is, please do reach out, whether or not, many of you have today in the sense of donating for books to prisoners, showing up here and connecting with Michael and Kate. I hope you've all enjoyed this, watching this. And to Michael's point, please, especially during the pandemic, for goodness sakes, when we're all kind of isolated or have been isolated, please reach out to each other. And it's never, to your point, Michael, though, it's never too late for that. As in, sure, those 5 years, but now you've had these last 2 years. So, please do reach out, and there are people out there that might know something that can help you, so hopefully you're not so shy that you won't give it a chance. Please do. And this goes back to stuff you had said before about different orchestrations, when someone else tackles a problem, it's going to come out differently, and understanding, hearing people differently, and understanding that the core essence of something is there. Thank you both for your advice. The balancing, you brought up balance and communication, which for Wheel of Time fans, they're all over those themes. And also the cycling of just experience itself. So thank you very much for both of you being here. For those of you that watched and stuck with us, thank you very much for donating. We're going to collect, like I said, all the donation information. Please do send us a note if you did. We'd like to let Michael and Kate and Books to Prisoners from Seattle know all about this and kind of what went on today. So, I can't wait to do this again. I hope you all enjoyed State of Kramer and Reading. This is the State of Kramer and Reading it's good. Things are good. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And remember, you have until midnight tonight that if you do go and buy some merchandise from Michael and Kate's store, if you wanted a mug from there, the Jen from New Creations by Jen, they're going to donate a portion of that money, or I think it was $5, was it, for each
item? Yep.
For each item. So That's a great thing to do. They'll donate that to this cause, Books to Prisoners. So please do, if you thought about it, please go check it out. You can find the link in the description of the video, or if you're here with us live in chat, I think the link's been posted a couple times, and if an admin's still out there, they can post that for us. So this has been a lot of fun. I know I saw so many questions in chat. There always is too many questions, but we'll do this again. I promise, if Michael and Kate will come back here, and we'll talk again here. Thank you both. Again, over $1,000 raised for Books to Prisoners. You guys are awesome. Yeah, you're wonderful. And that reading, I can already tell you, that reading was amazing. You did, and I'm sure fans will come by and hear that and love that. So thank you for sharing your talents with us. And I concur with all those statements that all the fans made at the beginning. It's wonderful to have met you last year, and I'm glad we're friends. And 2020 was better for it. So thank you all, and thank you all in chat
for being such a great community builder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. So thank you both. And for those of you that are watching, do come back on Wednesday. Like I said, we're going to talk all about Daniel Henney. That'll be a lot of fun. But the way we ended around here, if you're new around here, we say good afternoon from the Dusty Wheel and smash to black.
Welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel.
You went right to kill it. Look at you. You're already. You're just done. I mean, this is like this is
really well. And now I'm like, great, my turn.
And if you don't like that, and you want to say, well, Robert Jordan could have made the two rivers all white. He could have, but he didn't. So,
Just complimented me on my dress, and as you can clearly see, I'm
sad.
not
I see Nakomi as something along the lines of a Shadar Haran analog.
It does make sense why it outlasted the breaking.
Yeah.
See, this is why I have Therese in the show, because she's going to correct everything that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dusty Wheel Show. What? Meme Off Challenge. Yay!
Curved like baby face mounted on like a huge body. So like
This
all
is
of a
not
sudden,
just
it's like,
a
wow.
traditional fantasy, right? There are sci-fi
And
elements.
just a moment
for those that
ago,
are kind of
Rafe tweeted something. So let me get my guest in here with me. And
probably, I would say, put in 70-80% of the work. I got to be over the shoulder and be like, no,